Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 116th Presidential Inauguration of the South African Institution of Civil Engineering, otherwise known as SAICE. My name is Lorraine Bofana. I work for SAICE, a very proud employee. And it is a pleasure and an honor to stand here before you as a second-time host in 3 years. Yes, I had to mention that. And I am very honored. It is a real pleasure. This is one of the longest running events at SAICE and can be thought of every time we gather like this as the anniversary of SAICE. Being 116 years old, an institution rich in heritage and made up of proud membership and a great representation of some of the best people in South Africa, even if I say so myself. I just have to mention that being a second-time host, I fully intend to repeat all my jokes from the last one. Well, also incidentally, my KPIs are next week sometime through some wicked planning, and the people who will be part of the panel are seated somewhere in the audience. So I'm not asking you guys to laugh on cue, but I'm also saying that this is my last chance to impress. So help a girl out, will you? Okay, so before we begin, I'd like to assign a few house rules. I'm not going to ask you to switch off your phones because you all know you won't do that. But I'm going to ask you to please, at this point, please ensure that it's turned to silent mode. If it does ring, you're all going to buy us a round of drinks, so everyone can side-eye you for ordering drinks in the middle of the day. And if it also does ring, be sure that it won't be drinks that are on the complimentary wine list or the ones that are on the bar allowance. The restrooms are straight through out here onto your right. And there's a bar allowance for soft drinks, local ciders, and beers. Now that is all out of the way, and we've established some sort of decorum. I'd like to get to the proceedings. So what's going to happen now is that we're going to invite the presidential couple of 2019, that is Mr. Brian Downey and his beautiful wife, Linda, who are going to make their way into this venue. They will be accompanied by the current and now outgoing president of SAICE, Mr. Errol Kirst, who will also be accompanied by his beautiful wife, Sandy. And also forming part of this delegation, walking them through, will be the acting CEO of SAICE, Stephen Kaplan, together with his beautiful wife, Helen. And in keeping with tradition, all of the SAICE presidents, past presidents rather, who are here today and were able to make it, will welcome them via a guard of honor and in true South African style, because nothing says South African than a president of Irish, I think, descent, being welcomed and led through in by a Scottish bagpiper. Okay, so receiving the presidential delegation this afternoon are the past presidents, the following: of 1989, Bob Pullen; President of 2000, Alison Lawless; President of 2001, Kevin Wall; President of 2005, Mike Deeks; President of 2008, Johan de Koerke; the President of 2012, Dr. Martin van Vuuren; and the President of 2016, Dr. Chris Herold. So ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, I present to you the presidential delegation of 2019.
I always love these kind of events. They're so traditional, and all the traditions and the bagpipes and everything like that gives it a lot of character, and I think they're great. I just want to start off by welcoming Brian and Linda Downey, our incoming 2019 president and the First Lady. Welcome to you both. Also then to Errol and Sandy, our outgoing 2018 president and the First Lady. Errol has been amazing this year, supporting me and steering SAICE forward through this year, which needed some steering. Okay, I also want to thank all of Brian's family, friends and colleagues for joining us here today. I know a lot of them have come up from KZN, and that's great. Thank you very much. And also then, thank you to our SAICE past presidents who are here today, sitting at the table over there. Special thank you to Royal Haskoning for their total commitment to Brian's presidency and also for their sponsorship towards this auspicious event and their partnership with SAICE. Thank you very much. Thanks to SMEC for their sponsorship of the gifts on the tables, which you'll enjoy eating a bit later. We also have guests here today representing EXA and CESA. You're always welcome. Great to see you. This is an opportunity, and I like taking this opportunity to extend a special warm welcome to any other SAICE members who are here with their guests. It's great to see people from SAICE, our members, taking the opportunity to participate in our events. And finally, I'd like to thank our PR team. That's Nadina, Lorraine, Tabogo, Simon, and Mishka for their creative passion, which always make these events fantastic and successful. And just to close, I hope you all enjoy the ceremony and the lunch. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. That was refreshingly short. Caught you off guard there, didn't he? Now, being president is a very serious job. It's a high honor, responsibility, and it's something that doesn't get to happen to many people. You know, only a few get that opportunity, whether it's the job chooses them or somehow life leads them that way. And it's the kind of role that young kids, when they're growing up, they'll be on TV or some show, they're like, one day I want to be president, and we're all like, oh, poor soul, because it's not likely to happen. Well, until, you know, in recent years, the role has itself gained itself an increasingly bad reputation, largely due to it being accessible to, former reality TV stars and the like. No offense to former reality TV stars or people of that sort, but one kind of thinks that there'd be more stringent criteria for a role as important as a president. This person, through their individual decisions, get to impact the well-being of so many people all at once, or literally set off a World War III. So it's a very important job. But I can assure you that SAICE has a very strict criteria for who gets to occupy this position. So you needn't worry about them coming out as climate change denialists or anything of that sort. In fact, the SAICE Presidential Office might just be one of the most devoid of perks in the world. I recall a story a past president shared with me, because as the PR team, we get to travel a lot with the presidents during their tenure and be around them a lot to help them in the executing of their duties. And he related the story of how his son, he has young kids, his youngest, and they were all there at his presidential inauguration. And one morning, they were trying to get to the mall, and it was busy traffic, and it was really hard to get in, bumper-to-bumper traffic. And he remembers his son being visibly upset, looking at his dad and saying, "Dad, why won't you let us get in? Tell them you're president. Show them your badge." And unfortunately, the SAICE presidency does not come with blue light brigades. And I don't know, Brian, if that's a look of hesitation on your face. You want to make a quick dash for it. But it's really all hard work, and it's hard work that we are proud to bestow on the people who get to occupy this office, because it's very few people, and today Brian gets to join a lineage of proud presidents who have represented SAICE and have repped us in society so well, and we're extremely proud of you today. And today is to show Brian that we're all behind him, and we wish him the very best. So on that note, I'd like to call upon our outgoing president, Mr. Errol Kirst, who's going to share how his year went, at least the 102 days he had to dedicate to SAICE of his life, just this year alone.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I was given strict instructions about this afternoon, as I've been done most of the year. I just did what I was told most times. Oop. So, I'm going to spend a few minutes to tell you a little bit about what the year has been about. And Brian, don't be scared off. 2018, a year in the life of the 115th president of SAICE, has come and almost gone. At this time last year, I really only had a vague idea of what was ahead of me. As the photos flash by of the various visits, events, and functions that I, and sometimes my wife Sandy, have been privileged to attend and participate in, I firstly just need to contextualize things slightly. Lorraine mentioned 100 and something days. Well, in the year, as the year evolved, I attended 7 executive board meetings, 2 council meetings, 17 other SAICE committee meetings, 12 branch visits of 2 days, 6 division meetings, 2 university head of department meetings, which also lasted 2 days, numerous meetings with other bodies such as CESA, EXA, SAFE, and SAICE PMP. Sandy and I also had a trip to Zimbabwe, to Victoria Falls, for a few days to attend the ZIE conference, where I had to give the keynote address about a topic that I knew nothing about. I'll tell you a bit more about that later. Then I've also been fortunate to have been to the UK twice this year. Once on a business sort of trip, and the second time to represent SAICE at their 200-year celebration. There's also been numerous water and bridge building competition finals, 4 SAICE awards functions. All these events, together with the 4-hour trips from Nelspruit to Johannesburg, because we live in Nelspruit, waiting in airport lounges, and other ad hoc meetings that cropped up from time to time, have involved more than 100 days, 25,000 kilometers of travel by road, and 80,000 kilometers of flying. Nevertheless, every one of these events has been special in one way or another, as there's always something to learn, something to see, someone to meet, or even just to chat to old acquaintances. It was quite amazing how everywhere you went, there's someone that knew you, and they had to tickle the hard drive a bit for you to remember where you'd actually met them before. Nevertheless, in the 10 minutes that I was told I have to speak for, I really can't tell you everything that happened. So there's really just a couple of highlights. I mentioned the trip to Zimbabwe, Victoria Falls, which was really special to Sandy and myself, as we were welcomed and royally treated by our host, the Zimbabwe Institute of Engineers, and colleagues from the other SADC countries to the north of us. In case you don't recognize them, that's the president of Zimbabwe and the president of the institute. And as I said, there I had to give a speech or keynote address called Change Economics and Getting Involved. And then on the other external trips, there was a trip in June to London, where we met with the Institute of Civil Engineers, the Institute of Structural Engineers, and the Engineering Council of the UK. And once again, I had to give another speech to members of SAICE that live in the UK. And that one also, I was just given the title, and I had to speak on the impact of recent changes in leadership in South Africa on infrastructure engineering. Don't worry, Brian, you get quite good at sucking your thumb and making up stories. Then, of course, in October, it was off to London again for this big party to celebrate ICE's 200th. We were a couple of years behind at 115, but it certainly was a highlight of the year. And it was a privilege to meet so many people from all around, particularly presidents of ASCII and ICE and New Zealand and Australia and a whole lot of the Asian countries. The photos you're seeing are just a couple that we took while we were there. We actually spent 3 weeks, of which we did 2. We did the tourist thing, and 1 week we did the official business. The interesting thing to note, listening to all the addresses and papers and that, is that our colleagues around the world have similar problems to us. Sometimes the scale varies a little bit, but the same sort of problems. And it was actually quite fascinating. We at SAICE talk about the pipeline. And the pipeline is from school to the day you stop working. But they've also got a pipeline. They just call it the continuum, the same thing. They also have problems with politicians not budgeting for maintenance, all the sort of stuff we have, they have there. Then when we get to what I've called internal engagements, I think probably the visits to the tertiary institutions were really exceptional. It was amazing to see how our academics are still carrying out their tasks with passion and diligence under extreme difficult conditions in some cases. And of course, the one visit that I really must highlight was the visit to my alma mater, Wits. For those of you that went to Wits, the Hillman building that I sat in for a couple of years, more than 40 years ago, still looks the same. The chairs are the same, the green blackboards are still the same. Even the laboratory equipment is still the same. Fortunately, they've taken the dial gauges off and they've put electronics on to measure it. But it just shows you, sometimes the old stuff is really good. And of course, there's computer laboratories and security systems that they definitely didn't have in the 70s. Of course, my one concern visiting all the universities is all the young people that are coming out after 4 years and are battling to get a job at the moment. But that's a topic for another day. We all know what the economy is doing to our business. Then a little bit about all the trips around the country. After the inauguration, just over a year ago, it was all quiet until towards the end of January. And then it started. There was the JSD, the structural division, their lunch. There was a breakfast with potential sponsors. There was a visit to Pretoria to meet the Minister of Water Affairs and Sanitation, or should we say the ex-Minister of Water Affairs and Sanitation, all about the Cape Town crisis. Shortly thereafter, it was off to the South Cape for a few days. Sandy accompanied me on that one. There was the branch visit, as usual. But then this year, I've done a couple of things differently. I've tried to meet members all over the country. So instead of just going to one center in what we think is the center of the university, that branch, we've gone to other areas. So I went to Mossel Bay, I went to Knysna, met with members. And what was quite special about this one is that in Knysna, I actually sat in a little coffee shop on the beach, just drinking a bottle of cold water, because it was very hot that day, with Ian Braatveld, who is 93 years old. For those of you that don't remember, Ian Braatveld was the president in 1980, and I'd actually used some of his quotes from his presidential address in my address last year. And he's also currently our oldest living past president at 93, so that was also kind of special. Then it started executive board meetings, down to Cape Town to visit with the heads of the universities at Stellenbosch, a whole lot more meetings with politicians. We even had the good fortune to meet the MEC for Roads and Transport in the Cape, a very interesting character. Also branch meetings in Cape Town, went up to Stellenbosch. I also went to Hermanus and got Dawie Botha to get a whole lot of our retired members together. Hermanus is the famous place for retired civil engineers. There's lots of them. Then in March, I was fortunate enough to stay at home because we had the Lowveld branch visit, and that's where I stay. And there we also met the local branch, we went to the university, we met a whole bunch of politicians. That was followed shortly thereafter by a trip to Mthatha, where we did much the same thing. Consultants, members, municipalities. In April, saw Sandy and I visiting the Highveld branch, and that of course was also very special to us, and we visited members in Ermelo, Secunda and Witbank. And for those of you who don't know me, why it was special is we actually lived in Secunda for 29 years. And so a large part of my early SAICE life was actually spent with the Highveld branch, doing a whole lot of things. May was then followed by visits to Bloemfontein, rushing back from Bloemfontein to have dinner with the ICE representatives in Johannesburg, water engineering functions, committee meetings, meetings with CESA, and the list goes on. Then in June, there was another highlight. There was quite a lot of highlights through the year. There was a young members panel event at this place, somewhere in one of the other buildings, on the 8th of June to commemorate Youth Day, and we had the privilege and honor of meeting the Chief Justice, Mogoeng Mogoeng, a very interesting person, definitely. In this period, we had one of the lows of the year, in that the president-elect and sort of the next person in line both withdrew for medical and personal reasons. So we had a bit of a challenge, but fortunately Brian was around, and a little bit of sweet talking and twisting his arm and things like that. And then we had a new president-elect for sort of the second part of the year. Then, early in August, the fateful month of the year, we were in Pietermaritzburg for a branch visit when the incident happened and the storm broke. So the whole of August was occupied by dealing with the incident. It was probably the worst month of my life, and definitely the worst month of the past year. However, September arrived, the incident was concluded, and we started firstly with a make-up official visit to the Durban branch, and then a bit later to East London. Then early in October, this was a hectic month, October. It was firstly off to Algoa branch, Port Elizabeth, for those that you don't know Algoa. We had the second and last council meeting of the month. Just after that, we rushed down to Cape Town for the awards function, flew back the next day, and the next day we climbed on the plane to London for 3 weeks. So it was quite hectic. And of course, a little bit about the ICC function, the General Engineering Conference, as they called it. It was extremely interesting. And of course, on that, we were accompanied by a couple of SAICE people. Martin van Veelen was there. My daughter, Bridget, was there. Our daughter, Bridget, was there. Elaine was there for 2 days. And then there was a whole group of young members. So we had a truly memorable time. We all came back broke. That 20-1 is a killer. Perhaps the main sort of message or theme that I picked up in London, of which you saw a whole lot of slides earlier of different things, is really that us as engineers need to communicate better. Firstly, we need to communicate better amongst ourselves, and then secondly, we need to communicate with politicians and the public at large better. We're actually sometimes our own worst enemies. And the other sort of trend that I picked up is that in the world that we live in now, and the way we have to operate, we really sometimes just need to follow. Now, what I mean by that, we must do things as other people have done it before us, because quite often we actually fall in the trap of trying to be bigger and better than the other guys, and we just reinvent the wheel. Then, after 3 weeks in London, we came back and we had a whole lot of very mundane meetings in November, and we are now here. But overall, in conclusion, the year has really been an incredible experience. But of course, such a year is not possible without support from many people. So firstly, I need to thank my wife, Sandy. We've actually been married for 40 years in this year as well, between all the other stuff, for her support and understanding and presence throughout the year. And then secondly, for my daughter, Bridget, over there. For those of you who don't know, she's also a civil engineer. She's also a member of our executive board. But why I'm mentioning her, she's actually saved SAICE thousands of rands this year by allowing me to operate and stay at her home on many days and nights. But of course, our other daughters who also stay in Johannesburg were not spared. We also spent a couple of nights there, especially when they wanted babysitters for the grandchildren. And then, of course, the entire National Office staff, they've really been stars this year, with all the arrangements and issues that we've had to deal with. Stephen and Solette, you can be proud of this team. And a special thanks to the two of you as leaders of this great team. Then, of course, to all the EB members who supported me through the year, and of course, especially to Alison Lawless, Martin van Veelen, and Johan de Kooker. They're all past presidents, as you probably know, but they've really been stars and supporters of note. And of course, there are many challenges for institutions like SAICE, but there's also many plans for the way ahead for our 115-year-old organization, our great profession, and of course our magnificent country. I know that the team for 2019, which includes a couple of seasoned veterans and a couple of new faces, will all be there to help. And also, you can all be assured, I will still be there to do what I can, but from Nelspruit. 1 year in Johannesburg is enough. I did grow up in Johannesburg, but ran away a long time ago. So then finally, to Brian and Linda, our best wishes for your great presidential year. I know that Brian will lead the organization diligently and efficiently. I've had insight into some of his ideas, and I just know that 2019 is going to be a fantastic year. Thank you.
For those of you who don't know, this is literally the swearing-in moment where we're going to remove this chain that has been resting heavily with pressure on Errol's shoulders, with all the names of the past presidents engraved on it, and now welcoming the new president of 2019, we transfer the load and the pressure and the honor and everything that comes with this office onto the willing shoulders and capable shoulders of Mr. Brian Downey. And to assist with this are our SAICE staff members, Mishka and Simone. Now that's done. Mr. Brian Downey, now the new president of SAICE, is going to confer a certificate of thanks and gratitude for all the dedication and commitment and many hours of service Mr. Errol Kirst has given SAICE. He's going to confer the certificate together with the president's medallion. We are now going to invite the presidential spouses who are also part of this journey now, who have to make a lot of sacrifices in the tenure of presidency. We invite Linda and Sandy to join us at the front to basically exchange the traditional gifts. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the new president of SAICE, Mr. Brian Downey and Sandy.